But I think because it's a division opponent, the game plan is what it is, but you know this team. You know exactly what Carolina's going to want to do. You know it's a revenge factor, and I just think the Saints are going to be a little bit more prepared for that game than it would be any other opponent because it's a divisional foe.
Yeah.
I could be losing my mind. I could be off my rocker. The Saints may go 0-5, and that'll just be what it is. But I think they'll win at least 3 of those games. I think they'll beat Kansas City this weekend. I think there's a possibility they'll beat Kansas City this weekend. But I'm definitely going to pick them to beat Denver and Carolina. The other games, they are what they are.
All right, well, let me throw this out there for you. Cause this is a tough one for us. So let me throw this out there. I'm just going to go full pessimist for everybody. The last time the New Orleans Saints beat the Denver Broncos, we got to go back to 1994. Long time. Yeah. The last time that the Saints were able to beat the Seahawks, we got to go back to 2010. Long time. And the last time that the Saints swept the Carolina Panthers in a season was 2011. Long time. Odds are beyond stacked against New Orleans. And I'm not, obviously, we don't play the Denver Broncos a lot, so we can't pull that into it being a huge deal. We don't play Seattle a lot because they're not division rivals, so it's not a huge deal. But I point that out to say, especially recently, these are good teams we're talking about. Seattle, that's the game that I see Jimmy Graham going off on this year on the New Orleans Saints.
C.J. Spiller as well.
Let's say what we want about Jimmy Graham. He was soft at times. He's a little moody. But that moody is going to play against us. He's going to want revenge. He is. And what better opportunity is he going to have than to go against the New Orleans Saints, who are giving up yards and touchdowns to anybody who really wants them. And we've struggled against tight ends. And then C.J. Spiller, that's a maybe. We'll see how they use him. But we certainly don't have a linebacker that can cover C.J. Spiller. If you find one, let me know. We need to sign him today. So I'm real hesitant now. I can understand your logic when it comes to the Denver game. But let's keep in mind that Denver still has some explosive playmakers, even though they're missing Peyton Manning. And what's the one thing that the Saints have struggled with on defense? Not consistency, because in terms of consistency, they've been there. It's the big play. The Saints defense will give you 2, 3 and outs in a row, but then they'll allow, a run of 40 yards or a pass of 30, a backbreaker type big play. Denver has the ability to do that, just not as often because they don't have the same surgeon at quarterback. The game I think they win is I think that they go on the road and beat San Francisco. I just think San Francisco as a team is lost almost all their talent. I mean, it's a new coaching regime over there. There's just a lot going on. And I think if you've watched any of their games this year, the Saints, to me, are a better team. I don't like us going to Carolina. Usually we can win at their place, but after we've just beat them, they're going to be seeking revenge. Kansas City, now, see, I can maybe see Kansas City. So maybe I'll give us 2 wins instead of 1, like I said before. But it's real tough for me to imagine us beating Seattle, even at home. Real hard for me to imagine us beating Carolina. And as much as Denver's offense has taken a step back, they can still strike on you. I mean, they can. So, and maybe even the offense doesn't do it. Maybe the defense gets to Drew Brees enough to start forcing fumbles, and Drew Brees getting under pressure, throwing interceptions. The defense wins the game. So, I mean, I understand that you're trying to pull the optimism out, and if they do win those 3 wins that you said, that we will reach 500 before we get a much easier stretch of games. Because if it all goes how you have it planned in your mind, starting week 12, we'll have the Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions at home. Then we go to Tampa, go to Arizona, come back to Tampa. That's a much easier stretch of games, those 5 after this next 5. I could see us winning 4 of those. So if you got to 500 like you're wanting, we're looking at a team that might pull off double-digit wins. Possibly, but I just don't see that happen. I see let's quote Maya Angelou today. If somebody shows you who they are, believe them. The Saints are a 2-3 team with a horrible defense. They're not going to beat those teams that we're looking at.
And that's the problem that I'm having with it, because when it comes to the Maya Angelou quote, it's exactly the problem that I'm having with it, because the Saints are consistently showing me who they are. And the problem with that is that it's almost as if I'm in the desert, I haven't had a drink of water and what feels like 3 days, and I'm seeing this ocean of a mirage right in front of me, and I don't know what to believe. Because if I look at the first 3 games of the season, again, it's kind of how I started off the show. It's the idea that I saw a team that was good enough to win those games and lost them. Mm-hmm. And then I look at the 2 games that they actually won, and I saw a team that was just bad enough to lose those. And I'm caught in the middle of wondering which team is the New Orleans Saints. And that's the problem that I'm having. That's why I have faith that they can go into Kansas City and win a game. But I also have a more realism type of look towards it, in saying that I definitely think they'll lose to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the the Los Angeles Rams now, I have no faith that the Saints can beat them.
Let's put it this way. You mentioned the terms like realism. Well, I think the optimistic point of view for a Saints fan or analyst is definitely they are a couple plays away from winning the New York game and the Oakland game. But let's also reverse that. They're only a play or 2 away, literally 2 plays away from losing the San Diego game, which was literally given to them. San Diego had a New Orleans level collapse that allowed us to win that game. So exactly. let's not pretend like we won San Diego. We didn't. We won in the score column. We got the W. That's what matters. But it wasn't because of the backs of the players. They got gifted a W. And the same argument can kind of be made for Carolina. Carolina had a collapse of their own in the fourth quarter because they stormed back, got into shootout mode, and the Saints had given up a 3-touchdown lead. 3 touchdowns. And then Carolina really just did not put the dagger in our back. And I think that is only because they are who we thought they were, and they're a 1-4 team, now 1-5. Had that been any other team with any other higher level of talent, had that been a Seattle, had that been a Denver, we lose that game. They put the dagger in us, they take us down. Because it was Carolina, because they're in as bad a shape, actually worse than we are, we won. So put all that in perspective, we could just as easily say that this team is 0-5 instead of 2-3. It just depends on which way you choose to look at it, and both sides have very valid points. Yeah, we are only a play away from winning, and in a lot of ways, we're only 2 pass interference calls away from winning the first 2 games of this season. But what matters is those are L's. We're 2-3.
Yes.
And that's just, I think you have to continue with that mold. You have to just stick with what has happened. The numbers are black and white. You're a 2-3 team, and your hardest part of the schedule is coming up against teams who, talent for talent, are better than you. Yes, you can win. I just don't think we will.
And that right there, I think both points that you and I made are pretty much what sums up the New Orleans Saints season. It's being just good enough to win and not winning, and just being good enough to lose and not losing. And that's what has that's what has the Saints right now at 2-3. Now, as we shift our focus towards this game, because we've mentioned it a few times now, when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a big game for the Saints. And it's basically, it could determine the season. We can sit down and talk all the divisional talk we want to. If the Saints can go into Arrowhead and pull off a win, it changes the dynamic of the season, because it actually gives those guys belief that, you know what, all we had to do was weather the storm. What they don't see is the second storm coming. And that may be, the false confidence that I was speaking on earlier. It's the fact that, you go into Kansas City, you win that game, you're 3-3, hey, we're back at 500. But what you don't realize is that there's a storm coming, that you just weathered this one, and here comes another one. And that may be just enough to kind of, I guess, hold the Saints together long enough for the troops to kind of come in. Because Nick Underhill and I, writer for the New Orleans Advocate, were having a conversation about this. And it's the idea that you get Armstead, you get Bro, you get Rankins, and possibly Ellerby back. Those are game-changing type of players that could, kind of push the Saints forward a little bit. I'd love to see what this team can do when it's at least some semblance of healthy, and we haven't seen that just yet.
Well, let's also keep in mind that this team that we're talking about playing the Chiefs are not the Chiefs of even 2 years ago. They've only got really 2 players right now for multiple reasons that are scary, quote unquote. And that is going to be Peters, who's Marcus Peters, is one of their starting corners who is having a very strong year. He's got 5 interceptions right now and 9 pass deflections. Very strong year. And then D Ford on the defensive line. Well, actually, D Ford's they're one of their outside linebackers. I forget they run a 3-4 and show a lot of creeping up front. Other than that, I mean, you do have guys like Eric Berry still. You still have Poe up in the middle, but it's not the team that was, getting 40 sacks a season. But they're still strong. I mean, we saw that they just took down Oakland, but in the same regard, they gave up over 40 points to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think really Kansas City is kind of like how we are right now. They can go either way. Maybe the chips will fall in our favor. I am worried about if Spencer Ware will go off on us because he's having a really good season. I mean, the guy's averaging over 5 yards a carry, and that's impressive. You don't have to worry too much about Alex Smith because he's basically a pure game manager. So if you can just shut him down a little bit, he's not going to kill you. But I kind of see this game going either way. I'm undecided. I might have a prediction by the end of the show, but at the moment, I'm just not sure. I mean, and as you've already hit on this multiple times, which Saints team will we be getting? Which one will we be watching? And that'll determine if it's a win or a loss. Because honestly, I'm at the point now where I'm really not sure what's going to happen anymore. Because the San Diego game and the Giants game, just that alone is 2 completely different New Orleans Saints teams. The Carolina game, the first half and the second half, 2 completely different Saints teams. So what's going to go into Arrowhead? Are we going to have the cool, calm, collected Drew Brees, or are we going to have the Drew Brees from New York who him and Sean Payton couldn't put 3 plays together to make a drive go forward? What are we going to get? So,
and that's what we've been discussing, every time we kind of hit on the Kansas City versus, New Orleans game, and it's the idea of we don't know which team we're going to get going to Kansas City. And I will say this. I know you mentioned a moment ago that you're not really afraid of Alex Smith because he's more of the game manager type. And unfortunately for us, I know it's a different system. I know it's a different coach. It is a different team. But Alex Smith has been a Saints killer in his time, as a quarterback when they faced him. I mean, it's his ability to escape the pocket, and the Saints are going to struggle with the running quarterback because you just don't have the horses to kind of be able to do it. Now, I understand the D-line has been getting a lot of pressure lately. Over the past 2 games, it seems like the defensive line is finally coming alive. They're getting pressure on the quarterback, and a few times against Cam Newton, if Cam is not 6'5", 6'6", and 250, he's going down. That's not Alex Smith. Mm-hmm. So, I do tend to think that, that there's some chance that they can get pressure on it, but Alex Smith has been a bit of a Saints killer. Good news for the Saints is that the Chiefs have lost 2 recent starters to IR, and those are at key positions. They lost their starting middle linebacker, and they also lost one of their starting defensive linemen. That should spell well for the Saints, especially if the Saints can go in with a smart game plan of, as you say, protect Drew Brees. Don't allow Drew Brees to be the guy to feel like it's all on me. I got to win the game and play hero ball. Use Mark Ingram, and that's one of the knocks I had on Sean Payton in this game versus Carolina, in which I feel like why they lost the 21-point lead. You had a 21-point lead, and you still wouldn't run the ball. I get it. Carolina's secondary is awful. The linebackers can't cover. I get it. But there's no reason why Mark Ingram shouldn't have had over 100 yards in that game because the yardage was there for you to get, especially with the passing attack going the way it was and having a 21-point lead. The Saints don't use Mark Ingram in this game against Kansas City. They're going to get ran out of that building.
Well, let's say this, too. In terms of our defense should have its best game with maybe the exception of the New York game all season. because the one thing that the Kansas City